Hi, I just wanted to make clear to you that I've been hearing a rumor. I hear it constantly that Allah is the God of Islam. Allah is the Arabic word for God. Um, if you read the New Testament or the Old Testament in the Arabic Bible, the Holy Bible, you find that the word Allah is translated anytime is mentioned as far as referring to God.
When we talk about Allah, we have something very beautiful in Islam. We have the word for God. You don't have it in English. I'm going to tell you that up front. There is no word in English for the real God. The word in English for God is the same as it is for a false God. Anything worshipped in English is a God. In Arabic, the word for God is Ilah, not Allah. Anything worshipped is a God. A rock, a stick, a stone, a bone, anything that people can see, hear, smell, touch, feel can be worshipped, and that's a God or an Elah. In English, you spell it G-O-D. But in English, when you want to talk about the one almighty God of Abraham and Adam and Moses and Jesus and Muhammad, we're talking then about Allah. But you don't have that in English. You say, yes, we do. We just put a big G. Well, if you're starting the sentence out, you have to put a big G anyway, so you wouldn't know if you're talking about God, the God, or God, a God. In Arabic, it's real simple because the word Allah doesn't need to be capitalized. In fact, there are no capital letters in the Hebrew, Aramaic, or Arabic language. It's very clear when you say Allah who you're talking about. The question now has presented an opportunity for us to discuss exactly who we worship and why, and then let them make the comparison in their own minds to what they've considered to be worship or a God in their own head, according to their own religious background. What we say here is the description of the word Elah. Elah is something worshipped, anything worshipped. Auliha, that is the plural, gods. You put an S after the word God and you have gods, and that's Auliha in Arabic. But when you say Allah, there is no word like this in the English language. The closest they can come is to try to capitalize the G. But whenever you start a sentence, you capitalize the word anyway, so you wouldn't know if you started the sentence and it says God, if you're talking about a false God, a real God, a pagan God, or whatever is worshipped. With Arabic, it's clear because when you say Alif, Lam, Lam, Ha, it's Allah. And Allah is the proper name for God of Islam. This is the name for the God of Adam and Abraham and Moses and David and Solomon and Jesus. And by the way, Moses is known to us as the progenitor of the same religion of Abraham, just as Jesus is the continuation of the message that came with the prophets before him, and just as Muhammad is the one continuing this message. This is not something new. This gives us the opportunity to talk about that as well. In our other programs, we've discussed in detail about the word Allah. But just for the sake of this one, I will touch on it again. Allah is not plural, and it has no gender. It's not male and not female. When Allah says He in the Quran, He's not referring to Himself as male, but rather out of respect and dignity. There is not a she, nor really a he, when we talk about Allah, because Allah is much more than something compared to His creation. The other thing is when it says us or we in the Quran, Allah is referring to Himself in the royal capacity, not in plural. There is none with Allah. He has no partners. So obviously there's not 2 or 3 or 4. If we understand this, it helps us in presenting the correct message here about the oneness of God. So now we have opportunity to talk about the Tawheed or monotheism of Islam. So through the question, when they say, what do you worship? Whether they say, did you worship a black box or who is Allah? Regardless of the question, it gives us the opportunity to expound on it, to open up who is Allah and how do we worship Him. The name itself means the only one worthy to be worshipped. That is Allah's name. And it works really nice when we break it down and show them how they can understand this. Now, when we talk about our comparison to what they have, it's important for us to remember we should never attack their beliefs, and we don't need to attack them. Let them hear what we have and let them make their own assessment. That's strong enough. When you show the truth of Islam, you don't need to attack somebody else's belief. They'll attack it themselves. The common sense, God is one. He has no partners. For a person who follows the Judaism, the religion of Jewish, or for the Christian, they say God is one. This is in their book. It actually says to them real clear, to know, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God, one Lord. It also tells them that you shall not make any partners with God. Thou shalt not have any other gods beside me. All of this points in the same direction that Islam is talking about one God. So this is very important. Another thing that we find is that they'll ask you, what about this God you have, this Allah? Is that the same God of Abraham? We don't think so. They'll say that. They'll say we don't believe it because this is not the God of the Bible. This is not the God of the Old Testament, the God of the New Testament. Some have even argued that this is something that was made up later. There was no word Allah until Muhammad came along and made it up. This actually in some scholarly works presented, non-Muslim of course, in the West. But in fact, there's a simple answer for that. There are Arab Jews today, and there are Arab Christians, just as there were at the time of Muhammad and just as there were at the time of Jesus. Peace and blessing be upon him. I want you to think about this. If there's a Bible in the Arabic language, what would be the word that they use for God? That would prove it right there. And by the way, I have two, and you're welcome to check it out for yourself. You can go to any hotel or motel in the West, and there's a free Bible placed there by the Gideon Society. Take it out, open it up. In the very beginning of it, they're real proud of the fact that they've translated this word, God, and the message of God into all these different languages. The first language that they give an example of is the Afrikaans language. The second one they give an example of is called the Arabic language. And you can see it for yourself because they're translating the verse from John 3:16 that says, for God so loved the world, etc. You read it right there in the Arabic and it says it, Allah. Alif Lam Lam Ha. The same is true of the Old Testament for the Jews. And I have looked at it myself, and on page 1 in the book of Genesis, I counted the word Allah 17 times. So if this is something new, it's made up, how come it's there in the Jewish book? How come it's already there in the Christian book? And in fact, this is the same name that was used by Jews and Christians at the time of Muhammad. And it was understood that when they said Allah, they meant the one and only God. This was clear to them as it should be to all of us.
This is the website of BibleGateway.com, a very respectable Christian resource. It advertises or it markets itself as Bible.com. Search for a Bible passage in over 35 languages and 50 versions. This is the website. These are the translations and versions offered through this website. Okay, I'm going to do a search into a passage for Genesis, the chapter of Genesis. We'll start from verse 1 and see, and the selected translation, I'll select the Arabic, look at passage, and here it is. Genesis, or Tekween in Arabic. We're all familiar with this passage of the Bible, and it starts like this. This is from the New International Version. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And so on and so forth. In Arabic, the same chapter reads like this: في البدء خلق الله السماوات والأرض وإذ كانت الأرض مشوشة ومقفرة وتكتنف الظلمة وجه المياه وإذ كان روح الله يرفرف على سطح المياه أمر الله ليكن نور فصار نور ورأى الله النور فاستحسنه وفصل بينه وبين الظلام وسمى الله النور نهارا أما الظلام فسماه ليلا وهكذا جاء مساء أعقبه صباح فكان اليوم الأول ثم أمر الله ليكن and so on and so forth. فأمر الله خلق الله وسمى الله ثم أمر الله. Allah is who is ordering, who is doing, who is creating. I will do a very simple search on this passage to see how many times the word Allah is used in this single passage. Genesis from 1 to 31. There we go. We have 29 matches. In 31 verses, in a single chapter, the word Allah is repeated 29 times. If we repeat the same process and do a search on this text in English for the word God, highlight all instances, you will see the same phenomenon. The word God is repeated 29 times in the English text. Conclusion: the word Allah is the translated English word God in the Arabic Bible. Allah is God and God is Allah. This is the 6th chapter from Luke, and we are reading from the King James Version. I'll read verse number 12. And it came to pass in those days that he went out into a mountain to pray, and continued all night in prayer to God. This verse is talking about Jesus. If you read it from 1 all the way to 12, the personal pronoun he refers to Jesus. And the verse says, and it came to pass in those days that he, meaning Jesus, went out into a mountain to pray, and continued all night in prayer to God. This is Jesus praying to God. I will see its translation in Arabic. So we just choose Arabic from the top. Do an update, and this is how it exactly appears in the Arabic Bible. وفي تلك الأيام خرج إلى الجبل ليصلي وقضى الليل كله في الصلاة لله. Jesus spent the entire night in prayer to Allah. The word God is translated again in this verse to Allah. Jesus is praying to Allah. Only the word Allah is repeated throughout the Arabic Bible so many times, and that the Bible depicts Jesus praying to Allah. There is further proof that all Arab Christians do themselves pray to Allah. Not only the Arab Christian, but the Pope of the Arab Christians. This is the website, the Coptic Orthodox Church Network, and this is the page of Pope Shenouda III. I happen to have a lot of respect for the man. This is his picture. He is the equivalent of the Western Pope Benedict XVI. Now in the following videos, Pope Shenouda III is giving a sermon within a church and mentioning the name of Allah, and in a second instance he is praying directly to Allah.
كلمتكم في الأسبوع الماضي عن الله الغفور، من ضمن أسباب غفران الله للناس إن الله طيب، طيبة ربنا. ونحن في كل ما يحيطنا من متاعب إنما نطرح المشكلة أمام الله ونتركها في يديه ونقول له لتكن مشيئتك. إن أردت أن تحل المشكلة لتكن مشيئتك،